Hey guys, Chaps here for F1000, and we're back for the 2023 Formula One season. Today's podcast is a futures betting show where we're going to bet $1,000 on season-ending results. We looked at championship winners, constructor winner, head-to-head matchups, and more. This is F1000, and we bet $1,000 on every race. Hey, 2023 is here, Formula One is almost back, and this is F1000. I'm your host, Chaps. I'm joined always with Mike, and we're ready to talk futures. Mike, I think there's some low-hanging fruit on the board. The board is pretty big, but where do you want to start this week?
I think we just start, right with the core bets here. Let's start with the forecast for drivers' champions in 2023. And
right at the top.
we might as well start right away looking at the odds. I can see that Max is a heavy favorite, obviously.
How is he not a favorite?
Going into the season, he's minus odds. It looks like he's minus 138, which means that $138 bet would win you $100. So you're essentially he's below repaying for 100%. It's interesting that they would start him. With the dominance that he just showed, I think it makes sense, obviously. But it's interesting that they've got Lewis Hamilton as the second favorite in front of Leclerc. Did that surprise you at all? Did you think that Ferrari, just given the fact that they ended up Leclerc finished second in the Drivers' Championship last year, he's not being shown that respect by odds makers, that it won't necessarily happen again, or that he wouldn't have a chance to win?
It did surprise me. I'm going to bring this up a couple of times. I'm not really sure where to settle on Lewis Hamilton. I think a big factor of what we're seeing here is he's a 7-time champion. He's a name that average viewers know. So
he's Sir Lewis Hamilton, right?
Vegas and the odds the odds makers could never make him plus 1,000 to win the championship, because half the people in the world are going to take that just because it's the name they know and he's good odds. Now on the flip side, the Mercedes looked very strong against the Ferrari at the end of last season. They finished third, so they get a little bit marginal more wind tunnel time and testing time compared to the Ferrari this year.
Yeah.
And then again, on the flip side, I know that those races where the Mercedes did look better, the Ferrari was running at 75 or 80% of their power capacity because they didn't trust their engines not to blow up late in the season.
Yeah.
So it's very odd. It's very obvious on a macro level. The odds makers see this season going Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari. Right. From a team perspective, from a driver perspective, that's where they've placed the odds. But I just don't know, between you and I, Mike, is Lewis... Does he deserve to be the second favorite, or is this a little bit of he's the big name, similar to how the Cowboys and the Leafs and the Yankees are always going to get shorter odds than they deserve just because the public money is going to be on them?
Yeah, maybe. Honestly, I don't even know if we need to concern ourselves with it. I'm just thinking about, is there anything, when you look at what's available here, is there anything that you're interested in taking? If we're betting $1,000 on futures bets, do you see... do you want to do we put money down on Max? I think there's obviously a very good chance that Max does repeat. I think he's going to have a car that is going to be set up. There will be no constructor that sets their car up more specifically for a driver, right? He will have Red Bull's full attention in that sense, which, based on how well they performed last year with the 22 model, would seem to suggest that he's probably going to do very well again. I see no reason why he wouldn't be, again, a heavy favorite to win it. But is that something that you're interested in entertaining at this point, or
not? To be honest, not really.
No. Okay.
To take a favorite for everything to go right or have little go wrong throughout the season for them to make it.
Yeah.
I don't know. We can't forget about the sanctions that we have, and I don't know the impact of 25% less wind tunnel time. Is that going to have a tangible impact on Red Bull, or did they build the fastest car and they're set up already and it doesn't really matter how much they could test it in this off season? They also weren't the fastest car last year.
No.
The Ferrari was the fastest car.
I know.
They just couldn't keep it reliable. Now they can improve the reliability with the engine freeze. So no, I think the easy answer, the quick answer is I don't love taking Verstappen to win. He's the favorite. Okay. It's minus money. So much can go wrong. If we were to look at what is attractive on this page, a Carlos Sainz at plus 2,500 just because the
You're
odds
thinking
are so
you're looking
long,
at something that's a bit more of like a flyer bet.
where we could get some value with a
Yeah.
small flyer.
It's funny
bet.
that you bring up Carlos Sainz. Like I actually, I don't think that there's really any chance that he could win the driver championship. I think that there's probably better positioned Ferrari bets that we could make, because I am a little bit bullish on Ferrari. I mean, you kind of brought up the fact that they had to, tune down the power unit for the car for essentially 50% of the season last year, and still showed the best raw pace. They've got two really good drivers. I think that there's value with Ferrari. I think, to me, actually, I don't know if you caught the launch of their car. Take some cojones to have a live launch after you had your car blow up like how many times last year, right? So they did that.
Cojones. They put it on track.
I kind of like. I like the hiring of Vasseur. I don't know if that's his decision to do that, because if it's his decision, like, again, that's a ballsy thing to do. Just screw it. We're going to put the new car out on the track. We're going to have our guys drive it, have a coin flip, have them drive it. They didn't run into any problems. I actually really like. I really like where. Assuming they clean up the strategy problems that they had last year, between strategy and reliability, and one or two errors by drivers, which happens with every team for the most part.
It's gonna happen. Max did a 360 last year.
I know,
He's human
and
too.
he still won by like 10 seconds, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's still
so it's
human.
true. It happens. So those mistakes happen. Like I think that the season could have been very different for them, and I think that there's probably a chance that gap between Red Bull. It was a historic gap, pretty well. So I don't think that gap is going to exist again this year. It's very unlikely to me.
From a points perspective. From a pace perspective, I don't think the gap wasn't that big. It was more strategy
it wasn't.
and results.
And also you had the Red Bull was clearly a car that had been. It's Adrian. I get the engineers, right? These guys, the guys at Red Bull, obviously designed a car that could be raced pretty well in any window at any time. It was the most balanced car. Might have been the most balanced car that ever existed in Formula One. In theory,
it was.
Because of its performance across all the tracks, which is like, how can you? That's an incredible achievement for sure.
Well, we kind of summarized last year, but between the top three, Ferrari was the fast one, Mercedes was the reliable one, and Red Bull was the all-around, just always good in every condition one.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike, I think it's worthwhile. We've talked about the big three, and we're going to be talking about them throughout this show. I think it's maybe worthwhile to set the stage on how we're feeling about the off season from the three, and where we're even. We just talked about it. Is Ferrari potentially number one? Are they clearly number three? Vegas sees them as three. Vegas clearly has it Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari. It's a bit of a toss up for me. I don't think I could put my finger on which team is going to be the best. Red Bull clearly was the better team last year, but they've got these sanctions in front of them. Ferrari was the fastest engine, but couldn't stop it from blowing up. They're allowed to improve the reliability. No team can improve the performance of the engines now. Mercedes is saying that they found another 10th per lap. Do you have an opinion on establishing the top three, or at least how we feel about the top three?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think, before we see cars on track, I don't know if I could ever really sensibly say that the gap between Ferrari and Red Bull has changed. But I think conceptually, like we talked about, if they're able to run their power unit at its full capability for the entire season, then naturally that gap closes. So that, just beyond that, in terms of what design changes, the aero packages that might change in the off season, I think they're probably going to both progress at a similar rate. And the only real fundamental difference in performance that we'll see is because of I'm saying hopefully because I think Ferrari does have a chance to make this more interesting competition this year. Hopefully that power unit running at 100% for the entire season is the difference between Ferrari and Red Bull. Now, on Mercedes, so, and you kind of mentioned this
even right there,
off the top.
You alluded that you hope Ferrari makes it a better competition with Red Bull. Mercedes might make it a better competition with Red Bull.
So what do you think? So based on what has happened in the offseason and what's been said, I don't know if you caught the launch too and listened to some of the quotes from Toto Wolff and Mike Elliott. So Mercedes, they kind of fundamentally as a team tend to set the bar a little bit lower and then overperform. Mm-hmm. My primary concern with Mercedes is the body language and the actual language coming out of the launch and some of the follow-up interviews following the launch. Do you think that this car is gonna like close the gap between the Red Bull and the Ferraris? It might maybe through. So they've shown an aptitude to be able to develop the car extremely well throughout the season. They get full marks for that, obviously. But like the W13 started.
Let's stop on that. I'm not sure that they did anything to develop the car. They won their race in Brazil. What was it? The penultimate, second last race of the year?
Yeah.
That was at a time where we're dealing with altitude coming off Mexico, and Brazil's somewhat high as well. Ferrari was running at 70% of their engine capacity. They were non-factors.
Well, don't worry about Ferrari. My point is they beat Red Bull. Like, that's my point.
But Max had already won the title.
I get that. But I still think that they tirelessly work with the W13. So this kind of goes back to my point, though. Yeah.
I'm worried that. So I'm on the fence with Ferrari or with Mercedes. I think they've improved. I think they're going to be a top 3. It's not going to be 1, 2, and then Mercedes.
No.
But I'm very aware that with the odds makers and definitely with my recency bias of how I feel about Mercedes, seeing them on track at the end of the year, I think there was more circumstances there where Red Bull had already won the championship. Ferrari wasn't running a full engine capacity. And we got to races where with the altitude, the Mercedes setup, we talked about it last year, it was more a natural downforce heavy car. So when we got to the altitude, it leaned towards the Mercedes and its package. So I wasn't surprised at the time that the Mercedes started performing better. Now over 24 races this year, or 23 races, like the first race is Bahrain at sea level again. I don't know that we're going to see the Mercedes from Brazil pick up right where it left off in Bahrain to start the year. We might see it when we get to those altitude races later in the season again, but I don't know. I don't know.
I agree. I think that we seem to be on the same track, and I think this will direct us when we start getting to the constructors matchups a little bit later, and we're looking at something like a Mercedes versus a Ferrari, because the brass tacks with the W13 at the beginning of last year was the porpoising issues.
Yep.
The most important. Okay, listen, I'm not an engineer, but to me, it seems like you have no side pods, and I know that Mercedes is going to run this no side pods package again. Like, I don't think that really matters all that much versus the floor of the ground effect cars.
All about the floor.
New tech, just the floor, right? Like the reason that the Red Bull was so lauded was, and you don't get to see the floor a lot, but obviously the geometry of the floor was so complex and it was able to operate in all these different windows. The fundamental issue with the car that these guys started the new technical regulations with, the floor was the problem. So now they're way behind everybody. There was other, like Aston Martin started the year with a horrible floor too. They had to change the car almost completely. Mm-hmm. Mercedes has been working to improve that, obviously, and they're probably the best run organization in the sport. So it's not to say that they can't do that, but it's just the time and the resources that it takes while everybody else is making those incremental improvements while you're starting from behind. My concern is that they're going to start the W14, this year's car, is going to be behind the 8 ball the same way that last year's car started behind the 8 ball.
And I am seeing rumors that there was purposing at their shakedown.
I mean, that would be a problem if that's the case. Imagine, is that actually what that came up? I mean, that's concerning.
It's just rumors.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows? George made a comment and reading into it or something like that.
Yeah. So they also said, Toto said right away, like they're looking at bringing in like developments very early into the year to make changes to the car. I think they've already, I think you said the side pods will not that the side pods matter as critically as some like the power unit and the floor. I think they obviously the aero package, the design of the car, the side pods, they matter obviously a little bit. It's like they've already admitted like they will change. He said the side pods are going to change. We're looking at different solutions.
I saw that too.
It's not a core fundamental piece of the performance, but so does that not to me suggest that they're not as confident in this car immediately being able to perform at the level of the other two? Like certainly not Red Bull,
or with the grain of salt, Is it the usual Total Wolf? Yeah, we're not that great.
I don't know.
And again, reminder to the viewers, we have not seen preseason testing. We felt it very important that we do this show before cars are on track, because when we get to race 1 Bahrain, that's the information we're gonna rely on.
Yeah.
So we haven't seen any cars on track.
No, and there's value too. Yeah, we talked about this too. I think
but also the odds are going to change.
You're going to see the odds change, I think, probably pretty dramatically, because you're going to see money come in based on who's performing well in preseason testing. So there's an advantage if you can pick the right matchups right now and make the right picks at this point. There's an advantage, I guess, from a value perspective.
Okay,
right?
so let me rein this back in to where we started, and I derailed us to talk about the teams. I threw out Carlos Sainz at plus 2,500.
Yeah,
but I think it comes full circle. If we're both maybe agreeing that Mercedes is being overvalued because of the way they finished last year, the fact that the public knows Mercedes, knows Lewis Hamilton, coupled with Ferrari has a new chief at the helm with Fred Vasseur, so hopefully strategies are better. They've already explicitly said there's no number 1, number 2 driver at Ferrari.
Okay, you don't believe that though, right? Obviously, this is a guy who...
No, I do believe that.
No, Vasseur has a long relationship with Leclerc. Like a long relationship, apparently, going back.
They're both fast, man. I very much think that they'll give them 2 or 3 races, and then whoever's in front after the 3rd race, it's like, okay,
it doesn't. It'll
give you everything. We're going to try and win it.
I see what you're saying.
If Sainz wins the first 2 races, it signs his team for the year.
Okay,
but eventually they will say, this is our better chance. We're going to try and win the championship with the driver.
As an aside, you don't actually think that Sainz is Leclerc is going to be faster than him in the first 3 races, right? You don't think
he should be. He was last year.
Yeah. He's a better driver than him. So that's my point. Is they're going to have the same car.
But do we know that for sure?
Yeah, we do. We know that Leclerc is better than him for sure. He is. The odds makers know that, chaps. That's why.
No, I know.
He's better than him. That's not even a question.
But then again, so then I don't love the value of Charles Leclerc at plus 500 to win the championship. Because again, you're going up against Max. Max is going to win it. It's Max's title.
Yeah, no. So now
we're talking about sprinkling on value. If we're going to say, okay, we think Ferrari is going to stay ahead of Mercedes because the gap was too big for Mercedes to cover in one off season. I don't like Checo. There's no way Checo beats Max.
No.
And Vegas has Max at minus 900 in that matchup. We'll get there, but that's the most clear number 1 driver on the grid.
Yes.
So then, do we say Carlos Sainz? No, maybe there's a better driver matchup. I don't know what Sainz. I mean, that would be interesting.
I'm just taking a look here.
How Vegas sees the 2 of them matched up.
Yeah, I think that there might be. I'm going to be jumping a little bit here, but I think it's worth.
They've got Leclerc heavily favored in that.
Look at the double, the constructor double that exists, because the way that what we're describing is why don't we end up in a position in theory if we're looking to get something with a little bit longer odds? Mm-hmm. Why don't we look at, and you said it already, that you think Max is probably a shoo-in to win the driver championship. I tend to agree with you, but it's completely possible that I think Sainz
I see where you're going.
and Leclerc, why don't we pick constructors, Ferrari to win the constructor? I think it's Max and Ferrari. What's that?
Max and Ferrari is plus 1,800.
Okay, so let's maybe we mark that down. What do you think about that? It takes Leclerc. It takes Leclerc out of winning the driver championship, but I think both of us are acknowledging that even if Ferrari has a superior car, Max could still win just by the team Red Bull just putting all of their resources behind them.
Well, and we've seen Max's 2021 was Max won, but Mercedes won the constructor. So
exactly,
it's doable. It's not.
There's a precedent that's been.
Why did this not happen last year? Did Checo drive better than expected, or was it just the Ferraris blew up one too many times and they just 0 points really cost you over?
How many times did that? It happened a lot of times. It happened a lot of times.
I didn't come in with that written down, but I kind of, for a sprinkle, to your point, instead of going Carlos Sainz at 25, why not do Max and maybe both Ferraris are just competitive enough?
Carlos Sainz he's not going to win the driver championship. It's almost a waste of money. This is theoretically possible, right?
Yeah. This is why I love our relationship, because I shoot for the moon and you're like, that's impossible. Why don't we try to find something that's maybe in theory possible?
Something in theory that's possible. We're in the interest of betting in things that could happen in theory, right?
I'm gonna make a note of in the consideration pile here.
Put it in the consideration pile. It gives us. I get it. Like when you put a bunch of futures bets down, you want to win your bets, obviously, but you do generally want to put like $100 flyer on something that's got longer odds. There's going to be a bunch of short odds bets that are going to make up the bulk of what we bet on.
Are you allowed to parlay futures?
I don't think you can. I don't think I would want to do that either, to be honest.
No, take like take $1 and just like
just put them all
the
in.
futures in.
All the futures.
Yeah.
You just see into the future.
Okay, well, I've made a note for that.
Okay.
I don't think there's really anything else on the outright winner.
No, I don't have any other lean for outright Constructor or, I mean, really the only outright Constructor. So what's Ferrari to win the Constructors Championship? Like, is that plus 550, dude?
See, so just for the people, it's minus 110 Red Bull, plus 137 Mercedes, and then plus 550 Ferrari. Like, Vegas is very much saying this is Red Bull,
now,
Mercedes.
Do
Ferrari.
you not think though, the minute the cars get on the track at Bahrain and Ferrari
Mercedes
starts lapping the fastest,
and Mercedes has porpoising and Ferrari's fastest on track in testing?
I bet you. I wish I could go back in time and look, but I bet you these are just like the recycled odds
last year before Spain.
Honestly, yeah, probably.
It wouldn't be recycled odds. They'd have.
No, I'm just saying, right?
Mercedes would have been favored last year, probably.
You think so? Constructor? Yeah, maybe. First year of the new regulation. No.
They still won. They were defending Constructors.
No, that's true. You're probably right.
And
so that's
in
550.
A shot in the dark. Yeah. What team is going to nail the new regulations? Everyone assumed Mercedes would nail it.
Yeah, like it would be kind of crappy to bet that futures that we just talked about for Ferrari to win the Constructors and Max to win the drivers, and then just have Ferrari like Leclerc win both the double. That would be
just double it up.
I don't know, man. We can talk about it. I still think that there's no way that Red Bull's going to be extremely competitive. Max is the best driver. Yeah,
I think we both think that Max wins the title. So this Max and Ferrari is, can Carlos be better than Checo this year?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Checo? All the media is trying to say he's got 2 races and then Ricciardo's going to fill his shoes and he's out halfway out the door and
why? I don't think any of that's going to happen. I mean, he's good. Like
I think he's set on the team. I think the team likes him.
Yeah, I don't know why
he's a fast driver.
We know this about Checo, that there are certain tracks that he's going to do really well on and give you a chance to win. He's got a chance to win. Well, it's pretty good that he just starts the season with a chance to win 2 or 3 races, right? Like
I'm going to take this. So
you know that. So
let's jump to that because that's one of the things that I had here as a lean.
Yeah,
Checo 2 or more races. It's minus though. It's minus 125.
It's minus 125. Okay.
Checo to win 2 or more races on the year.
Yeah.
He won 3 last year. He only won 1 the year before.
So we know
now he won in Monaco, right? Last year?
Yeah.
And that was all because he crashed in quali and then no one can pass in Monaco and Verstappen still got a hurt butthole because of it.
Yeah, I know.
No. Sorry, he won 2 races. Leclerc won 3. He won 2 races last year.
He won 2 races last year. Because
Checo.
Yeah.
On the championship.
He won Singapore, yeah.
Does Max break another record and win 15 races again? I'm hoping the grid is tighter that Max doesn't win 15 races.
I guess my only counter to that would be I think you're right. I think that, but the wins are not going to be coming, like Checo's not taking wins away from Max. So where is he getting those
wins? Something needs to go wrong for Max.
Yeah, where is he
getting... year before it was Baku. Yeah. Max's tires blew. Yeah. Checo picked up the pieces.
Exactly, right? Like where is he getting those wins from? Because we've already made the point that we think the Ferraris are going to be, I get it. The Ferraris are going to be more competitive though, right?
Yeah.
So this is my concern is that so Max is not giving up. Max is a psychopath. He's not giving up any wins. So
giving up
you have to take the wins from Max. Who's taking wins? We think Ferrari has a chance to do that. We think both of the drivers, we kind of both, like, yeah, Carlos Sainz, I think he won a race last year for the first time in his career. I think he can do it again. Only one, and he should have won 2 more, probably.
Needed a lot of crap to happen in that race. Verstappen was out of the running.
I know, but
they were trying to invent ways for Sainz to lose. He's like, guys, stop inventing. I'm just going to go win the race.
Yes, that was great. But my point being, you have Ferrari taking away some of the wins in theory from Max, which he's not going to give up very easily. Mm-hmm. Who is Checo? Like, where's Checo getting more wins than he got last year? He's gonna be fighting 3 drivers instead of just his teammate and get more? I don't think
the books are saying that both Mercedes are gonna take away wins off that board. They've got Lewis Hamilton minus 3,300 to win 2 or more races. The guy didn't win a race last year.
I mean, that kind of is insane. If I could fade a bet, I would fade that bet for sure. Like, that's actually...
Can I take the reverse odds that he doesn't win a race?
I would love that. Yeah, well, we've already talked about our concerns with Mercedes. And I don't think, like, again, I don't doubt that they... I think George said this maybe after they did their shakedown. He made a good point that there are, is there like 4 races in the first 2 months of the year? So you have a lot of time. Yeah. There's a massive gap between like Australia and Baku.
Yeah, because China's off the board.
China's off the board, right? Which means you've got a team that, again, I think has demonstrated extremely strong aptitude in developing their car. You're giving them a long time to prepare that car for the rest of the bulk of the season, right? For all the European races, in theory, right? So kind of how the calendar's laid out, it might help Mercedes in a way. My point is, I don't think that they should be considered as a challenger for the Constructors title because those are points over the first couple of races that they're not going to get. So even if they end up becoming more competitive, like, I still think that they could maybe win 1 or 2 races. I would never think that Lewis is going to win 3, though, based on what we've seen.
So we're on the same page. I'm hopeful Mercedes is good. I think that they're going to win a race. I think that we really have a top 3 this year instead of a top 2 plus Mercedes. But I don't think they're favored to do that at minus 3,300. I'm not going to put money on that.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't see that happening.
No.
I don't see that happening.
Okay, that one's off. So, there's no value that I see in 2 or more races.
No, I don't. I didn't like those props that much. Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the props that were being shown there.
I'm like, Verstappen's minus 150 to win 10 or more.
That's kind of crazy, actually. Too. I would. I don't know if I would actually. How many did he win? 17.
15.
15, sorry.
17 podiums.
Yeah, 17 podiums. So, I don't know. It's probably a good bet, but I'm not.
That one's off.
We're not. Okay, that's fine. Do you want to look at the matchups? Do you want to look at driver?
Yeah.
Because you brought up. Okay, let's look at driver matchups. And what do you?
Because you said you had a lean. I've been excited to talk about.
You've been excited. Okay.
It's my favorite one.
Okay, let's hear it.
Even though we just shit on them a bunch.
Oh, great.
But this is great because Mercedes doesn't need to beat the Ferrari or the Mercedes or the Red Bull for this bet.
Yeah.
I really like the look of Lewis Hamilton to get more points than George Russell, and it's minus 163. For comparison, Max to beat Checo is minus 900. Bottas to beat Guan Yu Zhou, minus 600. Alonso over Stroll, 600. Albon over Sargent, 500. Where's the other one that I missed? Norris over Piastri, 600. 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton against his teammate is minus 163. I love this, Mike. I think, and I referenced this earlier, I think that there's recency bias, there's public money that the books need to be aware of, and also, to be fair, George Russell got more points than Lewis Hamilton last season. I think this is one of those cases where we're going to look back a couple of years from now and look back and say, we could have got Lewis Hamilton at minus 160 to beat his teammate.
Yeah.
Like, what were they thinking giving those odds? Now, I have a couple of pieces of points.
Yeah.
George last year in his right. He got more points than Lewis.
Yep.
But I think we need to look in the weeds. We need to look at the details. I've been watching old races because I'm bored as crap waiting for Formula One to start. I
Yep.
watched Bahrain this week. So the first race of last year. Mercedes has them in equal cars. This is the first race of the year. They say, this is the car we built. Here you go, guys. Go race. Lewis was way faster than George throughout the entire race, finished ahead of him, looked better. Then Mercedes on the Monday goes, uh-oh, our car is bouncing. We got to figure out this porpoising. This caught us off guard. We don't know what we're going to do. Lewis, we need you because you're such an expert and we've had you around for so long. We're going to give you test cars while we figure out this bouncing. George, we'll keep you in the best thing that we can give you. Just try to keep racing. That's when George strung off that string of top 5 finishes. What did he go, like 7 races in a row or something like that?
Yeah.
Every week where Lewis, this time Lewis, we're going to try a new front wing. Oh, guess that one didn't work. We're going to try a new rear wing. Oh, guess that one didn't work. And so George built up this huge gap. Then we get to the summer break where they were very explicit saying, we figured out the porpoising. We can now simulate it. We can start it. We can stop it. We're going to start working towards a good car, a good race car. And that's where we started seeing Lewis just be better and faster than George once they got back into equal machinery.
Yeah.
People, you might point to Brazil. George won the race. Lewis finished second. I'll remind people that Max Verstappen crashed into Lewis on lap 1. Both of them dropped back.
Literally kamikazed him.
Once Lewis got to P2, George was 9 seconds ahead. They finished the race at a 1.4 second gap. Lewis Hamilton he's a 7-time champion. He's the faster guy of the two. I hope that this year they got the equal car for the most part. It's a no-brainer in my mind.
I guess the only concern that I could possibly have with that is, do you have a situation again where I can't see Lewis Hamilton saying, like, I'm gonna just be your guinea pig again for the entire year. Like, if you guys need to figure this out, then use both drivers to try to figure it out.
He probably would have retired if that was the case.
Maybe, yeah. Because I don't think that he's obviously he's still interested in being the best. Clearly, right?
And also, if the team needs a guinea pig, George has been there for a year now. Like, you're
Yeah.
not going to throw the new guy and be like, "Can you test this
No,
out
no,
and
no.
tell me what you think about it?"
Yeah. It's a very reasonable approach for sure by Mercedes, but I tend to agree with you, and maybe I was kind of sleeping on that because, yeah, those are like minus, what is it? You said minus 130?
Minus 163.
Minus 163. Yeah, like when
But
could you ever get that?
That should be a Verstappen Checo
Yeah.
type of scenario.
George
And
Russell was
Verstappen's
driving a
minus 900.
Williams 2 years ago. He was in a Williams.
Yeah, he's won one race in his career.
I know, and I
Lewis
love
could
George
have
Russell.
won the race if he was out of the way.
I know, I love George Russell. But
you asked my concern. My only concern, and this would be a hindsight years from now, have we seen the torch get passed? And it's just a slower passing than we were expecting.
I don't think so.
Does George win the championship?
But why would the torch be?
I don't think so.
How is the torch being passed? I guess it's
don't
what
think
do you
so.
think Lewis Hamilton's skills are deteriorating? No, that's not. Well,
No.
okay, I guess my example would be: do you think Fernando Alonso's skills are deteriorating? I don't think so. And he's how old is he compared to Lewis? He's like
They're saying
3 or 4 years older, right?
Alonso's using. They're saying he's using this Aston Martin contract as a stepping stone to get back into a Ferrari.
He actually is a psychopath, so I would not be surprised, to be completely honest. I mean, that is possible for him, but to that same degree, like this is not a. I think I've read hundreds of articles about some of the older. I mean, you guys get forced out of this sport. You don't really necessarily see your skills deteriorate to the point where you can't be competitive if you don't have a competitive car. Like there's not that much of an advantage to be young in this sport.
You
right?
get your twitches are just a little bit. But
that's it. It's a minor difference maybe in your reaction time. Maybe a minor difference. And I don't think it's worth giving George Russell that significant. I guess
it's recency bias, man.
It is. I tend to
George
agree
got
with you.
275 to Lewis's 240. Like he got more points than him last year. But I think if you dig, and Vegas isn't digging like we dig.
No.
We watch every practice session. I watch all the qualifying sessions. Lewis was a guinea pig last year, and George built up a gap. And then as soon as they figured out the car, Lewis was so much faster.
Yeah, he was. I'm just looking at some of the data that I put together recently, and if you look at the last 7 races, it looks like Lewis overall between was only looking at the P2, P3, like the practice sessions, the practice 2, practice 3, when you're trying to run sort of the race simulations and plus equal qualifying and fastest laps. Like he had him on pace like in 7 of the last 8 races, it looks like. Just across all of those, like the average pace across all of those different times on track.
And we're also capturing on, from a Vegas perspective, George was the one that won the race last year. Mercedes won one race. George won it. Lewis didn't.
It stands out.
I know. I watched that race on Monday.
Yeah.
Lewis made contact with Max, then still stormed back through the whole field and had way more pace than George at the end.
Yeah.
Way more pace. I mean, I would put $1,000 on that. Like I think this is this is the kind of thing you will never see.
Yeah.
You will never see Lewis to beat his teammate at less than minus 200. Like you'll never see that again.
Yeah.
What was him against Bottas all those years?
Minus
not
600.
To mention
minus 600 probably. Literally.
Not to mention the Great Wall of George, who never DNF'd on all those contacts last year. Like is that going to start going the other way where he DNFs and Sainz stays in this year?
How many times did he make contact and finish? I mean, that was one of the reasons that we were on Mercedes to get into the top 10s or top 6s all the time.
For reliability.
They finished, but you're right. Like, is that compromised? And so, well, I guess to me, that makes me feel even a little bit better about the Lewis bet. In that's
what I'm saying.
You know he's going to get points. Like he's going to be out there getting points, whether he's going to be beating his teammate and getting those points. He'll still be getting them. He won't be getting 0 points.
In that matchup. Yeah. George had everything go in his favor. His contact didn't DNF. Lewis's contact did DNF in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
The team literally put him in the better machine and said, hey, just try to get us top 5s. Lewis is going to figure this out. And it doesn't matter. Mercedes could be the 8th team on the grid, and Lewis just needs to be ahead of George for this bet.
Okay. I think you've convinced me.
That was the one. I've been very excited to talk to you about this one because I saw that, and it's just like people are stupid.
People are stupid. I guess, like in theory, people are
like stupid. That's
there is so much of a recency bias that. Yeah. Okay.
And the car is black again, man. Come on,
that's
back
cool.
in black.
That's obviously really cool. Okay. Well, we're not all that bullish on Mercedes overall in comparison to the top 2 teams, but I think in a matchup between the 2 drivers, like you're right, we're not going to see year 1 of the technical regulations. They have this very complicated problem that they have to solve with the floor of the car. I understand why you would lean on the veteran driver. You're not going to, like you said, you're not going to put it on George and say, hey, man, can you try all these different things? You're not even familiar
no sense for
with
George's feedback. They don't have a feel of George for what he's feeling.
Exactly. They don't even have a baseline for him. So that it makes it's a very, I think it's a sharp bet. I think it's a very sharp bet. I wouldn't be surprised. I bet you there's been some movement on that already. Maybe
while we've been talking, maybe
just while we've been talking, when people are just like, hold on a second,
it's minus 600.
Are you kidding me?
We're not even live.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on from the drivers then. You said that you had a construction matchup that you liked to lean.
Yeah, let's see.
I took one note down, so we'll see if we have the same one.
You had one matchup that you like?
I had one matchup that there's a few, but there was one that I thought, I could see that.
Yeah, let me just pull it up here.
I don't know if I could see it.
Now you don't know if you can see it? Okay, what do you like? What are you looking at?
You don't want to do yours first?
Let's use match bets. Let me take a look here. Yeah, I think so. This one, I don't know, it seems incredibly obvious to me. And I've been trying to figure out why the odds are dead even. And I don't know if this is
we're on the same one.
Too.
Yeah, but are we on the same team?
There's no way that you're picking McLaren to beat Alpine.
Okay, I had McLaren.
This is excellent. Why would you take? Why do you think McLaren is going to beat Alpine? Why? Just tell me what you think. Tell me what you think. I have to know. This is crazy that you think that.
I think they're the better program. They are running the reliable Mercedes engine that doesn't blow up.
Okay.
Oscar Piastri cannot be any worse than Danny Ricciardo was last season.
Okay.
Cannot be worse.
Sure.
They were still. Actually, I don't have the driver. Were they close? I think they were close in the end of the year.
What are you trying to find?
Yeah, they were less than 20 points. They were 16 points away from each other.
Yeah.
Piastri is not going to be any worse than Ricciardo. I think there's a chance that Gasly is worse than Alonso. Alonso had a very good season last year.
He did.
He went airborne and still finished 7th that race.
Yeah.
And Gasly and Ocon hate each other.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
That's
it's even
it?
odds.
That's it?
It's even odds. Well, they were close last year. I don't think it gets worse for McLaren. It could get worse for Alpine. Yeah.
Okay, chaps. Like, think about what's happening with development at McLaren. I mean, these guys, they rent a goddamn wind tunnel from Toyota that's like years and years old. They've still been waiting for the new simulator and the wind tunnel. This, like, all that. Okay, let's take drivers out of it, because drivers, maybe they factor into 10% of the result. Right. Drivers drive the car. They factor in 10% of the result. The car is the only thing that matters. They're all very good at driving. Okay.
The Mercedes or the McLaren's a bad car.
It's a fundamental. There's a fundamental limitation for how good the 2023 McLaren can be, because its development is incredibly stunted compared to its competitors based on the tools that they have available. They also have a new team principal. Like, Estella's been in, Seidel left, right? So there's instability at the top because of that. I get Zach Brown's still there, but I think the guy who's making a lot of day-to-day decisions for the team was changed out. I don't know how much of a change that's going to necessarily have, but you want to talk about drivers? Okay, you have a rookie. Oscar Piastri, by all accounts, again, apparently he's really good. I don't know how great he's going to be in his first year in a Formula One car, right? In comparison to Daniel Ricciardo, you made the comparison to Ricciardo. Okay, maybe he performs at the same level as a seasoned veteran in that car. What we know from Daniel Ricciardo is that the 2022 car was really difficult to drive, and that Lando didn't suit him, and Lando has obviously been able to figure. Lando's a phenomenal, like, all the credit.
He's a championship caliber driver.
He absolutely is, for sure, and he's been able to drive that car into P7 a number of times, and that is the ceiling for that car. And if you think about it, if that was the season for the 2022 car, what's the ceiling for the 2023 car going to be when you've got, again, a new car that's going to be underdeveloped in comparison to its competition? I just brought up those points. McLaren has literally already said that they're banking on in-season developments to try to keep it as the 4th fastest car, or to be competitive for the 4th fastest car, because they're not even happy with the launch specification of the 2023 car. We know that they had troubles. I mean, there's a few teams that struggled at the beginning of last year with the new technical regulations. McLaren was definitely one of them. They seemed to kind of figure it. I don't even know if they figured anything out. I think they just had really good performances from Lando Norris ultimately in the end. But so do they not seem like a team that's stuck in neutral versus one that's progressing closer to the top 3? Do you think that? Do you think that they're closer to holding where they were last year versus progressing?
I agree that they seem stuck in neutral. I don't know if Alpine seems like a team that's progressing.
You have a whole offseason for we talked about Ferrari. So we gave credit to Ferrari for being able to fix their reliability problems. I think the same leash should be afforded to Renault for fixing the power unit for Alpine, right? By the same thought process. So if you think about if you look back at some of the issues predominantly with Alonso's car last year, there was a lot of auxiliary components that were problems. It wasn't actually like the main power unit components themselves. I think, how many times was it the water pump that was the problem for him? Like, do you think that they can
mostly hydraulic issues,
hydraulic pump issues? Like, I think that a team of world-class engineers is going to be able to figure that out in the off season. What we do know about the Renault power unit is that it was fast, right? And if they can make improvements, it was fast. It was in comparison to the Mercedes unit that McLaren was running, it was faster. It outperformed them. Right? Yeah. So you've got an advantage if you can take care of the reliability problems. You have an inherent advantage with the power unit. I think that when you look at, you were talking about the points last year, I think that how many points did, like, Alonso brought it up like a million times last year. Was it like 60 points or 70 points that he left on the table because he was racing in a position and he didn't finish the race because of one of those auxiliary problems?
Yeah. That was one of my concerns with Alpine, is how much was Alonso putting them in that position.
One of the biggest issues that, we know that Red Bull had this problem too at the beginning of the year, and actually I think fundamentally over the course of the year, Alpine struggled with this, was that they really couldn't get their car down to the weight limit. I don't think they ever did, even with the packages that they brought. So they were dealing with an overweight car, and they were dealing with unreliability with the power unit, and they still, in theory, were able to take care of McLaren handily. It wasn't even an issue.
Handily.
Well, they beat them by 16 points, and in theory, if they don't lose all those points,
but they didn't
for
beat them by
Ocon and
50.
Alonso, they didn't beat them by 50. That's fair. But to me, this seems like an organization that has a clear direction. I don't know how much you've listened to Safnauer and Laurent Rossi talk. Like they have this whole they have the whole 100 race plan. Their goal is to outdevelop every other team in F1 this year, right? Which they have. I mean, it's Renault, man. Like they're previous world champions with Fernando Alonso anyway. Like this is a team with history and resources to compete with the top. Whereas you've got McLaren on the other side, which has the same history and the same resources, but is literally just actually physically limited in what they have available to develop their car. It's just a handicap that they'll never be able to usurp, right?
You know, so I agree with you're making great points. I agree.
Let me make this one final point, maybe the most important point, because there's the most important piece of news that came in, is that like you think that Gasly is the most important signing in the offseason for them because they have the all-French driver lineup, but it wasn't. Because they just did something very recently that was way more important. And that they just signed Zidane to be... I don't even know what he does with the team.
Zinedine?
Yeah. Just Zizou is on the team. I don't know what he does. Maybe he just he's going to call the drivers before every race and just breathe into the phone or something to get them fired up. I don't know. Like, if you think, okay, so Gasly, what are these? Those guys are like 27 or 28, right? They got to be.
Yeah.
Right? So do you think that they grew up, like, who's their hero growing up?
Probably.
Yeah, like Zidane was their hero growing up, right? It wasn't like Alain Prost. It was Zidane, for sure, 1,000%.
Yeah.
Now he's on the same team as them. Like, that's a team that knows what it's... They bring in the talisman. There's no way... They might win. They might win the constructor. Like, what are the odds? Like, they might win the constructors.
Yeah.
This is a team... Again, they
to
have direction.
Remind me that...
Yeah.
I was recency bias. I think I let the summer silly season convince me that Alpine has no direction. Because they thought they were keeping Alonso, then they lost him. Then they thought they were getting...
I know.
Then they lost him. And it's like... So that, to me, made it seem like a clown show, but... I think you're right. Now McLaren is on a path; they're just a couple years away.
Oh, totally. And they have. I mean, hopefully they can retain.
And they have
Lando.
the championship driver. Like,
can they retain Lando Norris?
Two, 3 years from now.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think that they will get back on track. But to be honest, I would be more concerned about Aston Martin catching McLaren than I would about McLaren maintaining 5.
Not this year.
Not this year. I don't like. I actually don't. It's possible for sure. It's possible that McLaren finishes in 4th too, and Alpine has a tough year. But to me, I see two organizations that are going. One is stagnated. They're hamstrung at this point because of the limitations they have from a development side, and you've got another organization that is extremely, extremely confident in the product that they just debuted last week. They seem to really think that this car is going to help them be competitive or close a gap between the top 3 teams. And again, they've got a clear plan, and they've got the resources dedicated to try to outdevelop everybody else across the entire year. To me, honestly, the only concern with Alpine is, are you going to have a problem with the 2 French guys? Like, I don't...
Hitting each other.
Is that going to be a problem?
Which,
I don't know.
They had a problem with Alonso and Ocon, but they still somewhat managed. I think it was Brazil. They told Ocon, let Alonso through.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, I'm attacking Vettel. But then, we didn't see it on the TV, but... Later on the lap, he did let him through. They found a way to manage guys that don't like each other and like hitting each other.
Yeah, they found.
You've convinced me.
Okay, do you see
You've convinced me. I was down on Gasly. You've reminded me that he's fast. He's definitely, when we're talking about 2 teams that are adding a driver, you got to take Gasly over Piastri, the unknown.
I think so. Like, Oscar Piastri could be a sensational driver in the future for sure, but it's his first year, and I think we've seen that the McLaren is a difficult car to drive. I don't think that they're going to be... It's not going to all of a sudden be this incredibly drivable car all of a sudden in 2023.
No.
And there were... Like, Alpine, they did struggle. I think my understanding with the weight problem is I think that they were one of the very few teams to actually understand that porpoising was going to be a problem, like a fundamental issue with the ground effect cars going into 23. So they did a lot of like building up and reinforcing the floor of the car to mitigate that. And that, I think, was just that was a limitation for them across the entire season, that they could never get down to this weight limit. Now that they will be starting the year very closer at the weight limit, I think you're going to see them fast right away. Really, honestly, the only problem that they might have is in how aggressive they were with developing the power unit. Like Ferrari and Renault essentially designed their power units to maximize performance, understanding that they could run into problems with reliability in year one, and they both did, like obviously, right? But understanding how the regulations were set out and that they're allowed to make changes to improve reliability, said this is worth the risk at this point. And they already went through, I think this is maybe why we're kind of leaning toward both Ferrari and hopefully now to Alpine in some of these bets, is that they kind of went through the tough time, the tough period.
The growing pain.
The growing pain,
If you were to take a plan and give it a 4-year engine plan?
Yes.
We got the same engine for 4 years. You'd want to start with the best you can and then make it reliable, so by the 4th year, you've still got the fastest engine, and now it's not blowing up, and you win your one title.
Exactly. That's exactly, I think, and Alpine, I think, for them, because they had this whole concept of let's come up with a 100-race plan, we want to, under these new tactical regulations, be able to close the gap. That's the only way that you could possibly compete with the big boys, is that you have to be as aggressive as possible in development of the power unit, in hoping that yours is on the same level or even potentially can perform better than theirs. Right?
Even the fact that they make their own power unit, whereas McLaren still, okay, what is Mercedes going to drop off on our doorstep?
That's exactly it. And that, like, nothing against the Mercedes power unit, because it was very reliable last year, and we were quite happy to place bets on any team with one of those power units in their car. But again, I think it's short-sighted to discount, and we already talked about Ferrari, but I think it's short-sighted to discount those two teams purely based on that issue, because it is something that they are working on tirelessly in the offseason, is to improve that reliability. Plus the fact that, if you've got pump and like hydraulic problems, like those are auxiliary to the power unit itself. Those are issues that in theory should be easier to solve than like fundamental components like the internal combustion engine or the motor generator units or whatever else.
Or you decided not to have side pods, and
it
turns out you need them.
There you go. What are you?
Okay, I'm with you.
You get it? You see?
Alpine.
To me, is it
Alpine over McLaren?
To me, it's curious that they're both at minus 120. Like that even odds.
Well,
I
that
understand.
was the toss-up in the book.
Yeah, but I think to me it just seems obvious that the answer to this in year two is Alpine. They've already beat them in year one. Oh my god.
Well, Mike, before we start divvying up our money, like, is there anything else that we were interested in? I think we covered my leans, but
do you not think that it's curious that the book has Haas at minus 275 over Williams? And I'm only saying that from the
I don't think that's curious at all.
I'm thinking so there's obviously a lean toward Haas with superiority over Williams, and there should be. Yeah. Are those odds not short enough? I think we might want to explore that a little bit.
You think that should be like 500 if we should capitalize on
possibly?
275?
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of reasons that would support, again, this idea that Williams is going to be a bottom dweller. I mean, we know. So Jos Capito leaves, and apparently he left Williams in shambles. Everybody was.
Well, they brought in
they bring in James Vowles, yeah.
Right?
But so how, I don't know how he had no impact on the 2023 car, obviously, right? Because he was brought in so late. So you've got.
Was he was the strategist?
Yeah.
Did he?
Apparently, he just did a bunch of different things.
Anything in relation to leading the team for Mercedes?
I think
this is a totally new role for him.
Yeah, I think he did a bunch of different things. I think at some point he was doing media strategy and I think he was doing a bunch of different things.
He was the guy he was on Valtteri's comms, wasn't he? Valtteri's engineer. Valtteri, this is James. That's James, right? James, fuck you.
I don't know. I have to check.
You know the clip I'm talking about?
I know who you're talking about. It could have been. It honestly could have been him.
He's aboard the fastest lap.
Yeah, it could have been him. Yeah, it could have been him. I mean, So all
that to say, he's not Fred Vasseur coming in to lead the team.
No, my opinion of Williams in 2023 has nothing to do with James Vowles' his ability to run the organization, because I don't think he's going to have enough time to make an impact on their performance
They've
this
got
year.
a rookie driver.
You got a rookie driver, and I really like Alex Albon, but like he is limited in what car they put him in. Obviously, he's way better served being in a car at the back of the grid and overperforming with it than he would be in the position that he was before, like with Red Bull, for sure. He's in the right spot, for sure, on the grid. But they seem to be a team that, like, what are they building off of last year? Probably, they're building off the worst car. So if everybody's, like, let's say if everybody's progressing even reasonably at the same rate, they're still way behind everybody. Because they have a car that didn't generate any downforce at all. Right? Like that's a problem.
How much money have they lost without Sofina?
I think it's a significant
like
amount.
They're just,
yeah.
Right. They don't have a plan. They're starting on the worst car in the new regulations. They've got a rookie driver. They lost a bunch of funding. They've got a new principal.
Like you mentioned, mentioned the financial situation. Like Haas actually finally might be
Haas
in a
found
good.
money.
Yeah, they got money, Graham. Right, like they actually might be in a good position.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to spend to the cost cap, right? Which is like that's massive for Haas.
I kind of like that. If we're looking to beef up our book here a little bit too, to not only have 3.
And so the problem with Haas has been that they can't they're not a prototypical or they're the smallest team out there. They don't have their own development team, or they don't have the same capabilities as the other teams do in theory, right? But here's
my read on Haas.
Yeah,
they came in, they were fast. What did they finish 4th or 5th that first season?
Which is crazy, yeah.
Then, and then they had a couple of years dealing with what's his face, Mazepin, and his dad, and then last year they got the rug pulled out from underneath them at the start of at the first race and had to scramble to find a driver.
Yep.
Then they had this whole Mick Schumacher, and he's a name, but he's getting more bad press than good press, and like I think this is a season where they've got their 2 guys. They're no nonsense.
Yeah, they're 2 veteran. So I guess from a driver's standpoint, they have 2 guys who are capable of driving the car around the track and not running it into a wall, at the very least. That's already an advantage in theory over Williams, because I don't know what Logan Sargent's going to do. So, like that, with Kevin and Nico, they're probably in a pretty good spot. They have low expectations, I think, at the very least, which I think in some ways is going to help them, right? There's very little pressure on this team and both of the drivers, I think, at this point. They both took breaks from F1 and then came back. We talked about the potential benefit that Alfa Romeo and we'll see as a customer for Ferrari, and seeing the boost in performance of the power unit, because it'll be more reliable. It can be run at a higher capacity. Haas gets that bonus as well.
Yeah.
Right? So I think like minus 275, I'm thinking like it's almost like a fairly obvious pick between the back marker and a team that should perform better than they did last year and still finish with more points than Williams.
The only pick that Vegas has more favored is Red Bull over Ferrari, and I would argue that Haas over Williams feels more likely.
Yeah, like, is there anything that we're missing? I mean, like, again, I know the only thing that they're missing as a team, in theory, is the resources available for them to, outdevelop teams. I mean, they have to score their points early. Like, they got to score. Like, their car that they run is essentially like that's their car, right? They might bring like one update package, something, but they don't have a factory. They're not pumping out parts. I mean, they just have all Ferrari parts. I mean, I guess it kind of is like how bullish are you on Ferrari? We kind of like Ferrari this year. They have all Ferrari parts. So like I think for us, that
they finished 8th last year.
They finished 8th. I know they finished 8th. They scored a lot. I think at the beginning of the year they were way off the pace at the end, and that's kind of I think the story for how a Haas season kind of goes, is that they hopefully.
When was Magnussen got a pole?
Yeah, that was, but that didn't matter. Like that was, I don't think that was
right,
that was
Brazil.
Yeah, that was.
No, it was wet. There were circumstances.
But he still did it. Like he still did. That's actually his.
Yeah.
That's his pole. That's not like Haas brought in-season upgrades to Brazil and
Magnussen got a pole.
He just did that himself. That's
late
remarkable.
in the season.
Which I think,
dude, I actually like this a lot. They beat Williams by 29 points last year, and the way it's setting up, like Haas is set up to get better, Williams is set up to get worse.
Yes,
from all the changes that have happened in the offseason.
Yeah, I think it's kind of obvious that they're going to be.
I like it.
They should be favored, and they probably will finish ahead of them. So that might be the fourth bet right there.
I think that's the fourth bet.
Okay.
It didn't jump out to me because it's 275.
Well, obviously you love the dogs. Like, you don't even consider something.
I like dogs.
You see it, yeah. You saw minus and a 2 in 3 digits, and you didn't even look at it.
Actually, my favorite lean was a minus.
No, that's true. Actually, and
just...
so you know what I do like is that we've got 3 principal bets that I think we'll probably be divvying up. I'm imagining like it could be 300 on each one, for example. I'm leaning more toward Lewis Hamilton. I know you're gonna. I know you're gonna bring that up.
Yeah.
But
I'd like to put the bulk on.
Yeah, I get that, and I understand why. Because anything can happen with the constructors too, in theory. But I think that they're all minus money, right? I mean, they're all
okay.
Favorites.
So to recap, we've landed on we've got Lewis Hamilton versus George Russell in a matchup. We're taking Lewis at minus 163 to win that. We've got Alpine versus McLaren in a team matchup, and we like Alpine at minus 120. We've got Haas versus Williams in a team matchup, and we like Haas at minus 275. Yeah. And then we've got a little sprinkle here where we like Max Verstappen in combination with a Ferrari. So Max wins the drivers, Ferrari wins the constructors, and that's plus 1,800. Now we got to figure out where to put our money.
Yeah. Is it just like 400, 300, 200, and I don't know if we need to spend $100 on the what is it like? Sorry, it was plus 1,800. You said so a $100 bet wins you $1,800. Like I don't know if we even need to like that might be a $50 bet, and
it could be,
and we move that 50 onto the Lewis bet.
We usually start with a shot in the dark.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put just a shot in the dark 500 on the Lewis just to see how that feels.
Okay. Yeah,
we can adjust.
I'm okay with that. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
We can adjust.
Yeah, so you've got let's say it's a 500, then you've got 50 on. So you've got 550. You've got another 450 to divvy up. We could put. I would say you probably get more for your return on Haas in theory. If we've got like maybe it's 250, 200,
Haas
or
feels more likely
300 to 150 maybe.
So you like 50 there.
Does that make sense to you? Like I mean I really think that Alpine is going to beat McLaren. I really think they are going to. Maybe it's leave 200 for that.
My reservation is at the end of the season.
Yeah.
I do expect that Alpine and McLaren are side by side in the standings.
Yeah. Whereas
I don't think it's a guarantee that Haas and Williams are side by side. You could have the AlphaTauri in the middle. You could have the Alfa Romeo down there somewhere.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming.
But this ends with McLaren and Alpine being 4-5 in some manner.
I think you're probably right. Yeah,
probably.
I think you're probably right. Okay, then one you want to leave 150 for the McLaren and Alpine matchup then.
150 and then 50 on the Max. We got 500 on Lewis to beat George. That's the bulk. I mean, do you feel comfortable with that being the bulk?
I mean, that's a lot. I don't know. Do we want to pare that down? Do we want to take it down a little bit? So sorry, read that through to me again. That's 500.
500 on Lewis.
Yeah.
300 on Haas.
Yeah.
150 on Alpine.
Yeah.
And 50 on the Max and Ferrari.
Okay, yeah. Can we? That's heavy on.
You want to pair?
I like it, but I don't think that that's prudent. Right? In theory, when you're looking at what the odds are, I mean, I know we're saying that the odds shouldn't be that, right? Like, I think we got to pare it down a little bit. Like, I mean, if
we were sitting here and that was minus 600, you'd be like, oh, the odds are.
And you're right. Like, should it be minus 600? Maybe it should be minus 600.
Probably should be.
I
Max is 900 over Checo.
I know. But George is better than Checo.
2-time champion.
I know. George is better than Checo.
Yeah. Well, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking 450 or 4 for the Lewis bet. And what can we do with that extra? Like, would you like at least bring the Alpine McLaren to 200?
Up to 2.
At least, yeah. Maybe it's 450.
I mean, that feels clean and even at 4, 2, 1, and 3. And then Max and Ferrari get the extra 1 or get the extra 50.
Is that a waste of $50? No, I don't think it is. I'm okay with that.
I don't know.
I'm okay with that. $100, yeah. Look,
I mean, dude, we haven't seen a car on track. We're having fun with this.
Yeah.
We make our money watching cars on track.
We do.
With the weekly races. This is a fun thing at the start of the year.
Yeah.
We're going in blind. We're throwing all this money away.
I guess in theory.
Yeah. We haven't seen anyone on track.
I know. Oh. Yeah, let's do 4-3-2. 4-3-2-1. I like it.
I don't want to do 3-3-3 and
No,
like
no, and one. No. Let's do 4-3-2-1.
No.
We have leans. You've convinced me that I think the Lewis bet is the bet to take.
that was. I mean, we could, who knows, right? George could be the next. George might win it this year. Who knows? We got 7-time world champion against his teammate.
Yeah.
At those odds.